Opinions are based on limited knowledge bases or biases of preference. Appeal to authority is accepting another's opinion who has perceived greater knowledge or lack of bias. All professionals merely have opinions. For example, judges. Judges give opinions when making a ruling. Law relies on precedents of authorities based on other people's opinion. Real doctors merely have opinions. Fake doctors, as those seen in the liberal arts theoretical pseudoscience of psychology, give delusional opinions. Those seeking positions of authority merely want their opinions to carry more weight and band together with those of like mind. Most people cannot distinguish between facts and opinions. Nothing I stated is an opinion. Although it's October 2024, opinions. People have opinions about everything and make opinions all the time. The only time opinions should only really matter is on topics like pineapple on pizza. The problem with opinions are usually emotion-based. And this video is kind of inspired by a comment section of a video. And this person was stating that they were forced to do something between the years of 2020 and 2022. And their excuse was because they had someone elderly in a hospital setting who they're going to pass away, I guess, in time. And they use that as an excuse to say, well, they were forced. And many people use that excuse. And I've said for many years now, they're all choices. Simply because you do not like the alternative doesn't mean there's no choice. And I responded to that person by saying, no one was forced. No one forced you to do anything you didn't want to do. And I even expanded on that, for example, at some point by saying, does it even make sense that someone is very ill and in order to be able to see them in their, I guess, final moments or whatever, they had to do something that they didn't want to do, which would compromise themselves and possibly, more than likely, put them in that same situation, basically going down with the ship. Now, what's really interesting is the point of that comment was being forced, or the perception of being forced, allegedly being forced. That was the whole point of the comment, not the excuse. Other people were focusing on the excuse and, giving their condolences and whatever. But people actually missed the main point. And when I try to highlight that, I get ridiculed. And even saying that how insensitive I am. No, the point was allegedly being forced to do something that they didn't want to do. And this is the number one weakness with the human species, our emotions. And emotions are being used to control. For example, this thing called doublespeak. How you can turn something that's bad into something good by making it sound better than what it is. And then in time, evolve that into something that something may still be very bad, but you're opening your arms, welcoming it because it sounds so good. controlling people's emotions through doublespeak. Using logical fallacies is another way that controls people's emotions. And people respond using their emotions while using logical fallacies to justify whatever. And this is, for example, how people can justify doing very bad things themselves using logical fallacies. And then just using things that will trigger people's emotions. For like the example I just made in this comment section, the excuse that was given of this elderly person triggering emotions. And most people fall for that. Now, I've highlighted in my content, even recently, how there's flavors of Kool-Aid on all sides. You can have, for example, people opposing something, flavors of Kool-Aid for that. Call them alternative types, freedom types, truther types, and they're buying into a Kool-Aid and having their emotions being used against them. And people on the, as a descriptive mainstream side, the same thing. Things that are being used to trigger their emotions, etc. Emotions cloud perception. They distort reality. And that doesn't exclude, for example, what some would call, or many would call, positive emotions. We know, for example, the emotions of anger and fear and everything else, and people focus on that, saying, oh, how bad that is. People tend to see that affecting people's opinions, decisions, reactions. But what most would call positive emotions, like love and all these things, have the same effect, just different flavor of Kool-Aid. And this goes to the movie The Matrix, where they talk about the red pill and the blue pill. And so many people bought into the red pill being awake and everything else. And there are plenty of people, and I've highlighted this in overlays over the years, how people have broken down that movie alone with the two pills, red pill and blue pill. And the red pill had the same effect as the blue pill. It was just different color of pill, different flavor of Kool-Aid. Same effect. It kept the main character as a descriptive asleep. People don't see that. The people, for example, on the alternative side, think, oh wow, I can see that other side and see how asleep they are, but they don't see themselves being asleep. Remember that old saying, when you point one finger, three point back at you. Same thing. People's emotions are being used against them. You know, we have fear, for example, and when you look at religions and belief systems, there's an element of fear there, not to perhaps upset the Most High. And this is why when it comes to religions and belief systems, there's no point of having any kind of discussion, and people convince themselves of having experiences and everything else, where in a lot of cases, the studies made famous by Julia Shaw gives insight to this, implanting false memories. People's feelings play a role in everything else. Just going to segue for a moment. The studies made famous by Julia Shaw, implanting false memories, focuses on external means to create a false history, we'll say, false memories. But people can do that to themselves through feelings. And I've highlighted this myself in my content over the years as well. And people are stuck. Once they have that feeling of whatever, on whatever topic, ingrained into them, it's next to impossible, if ever possible, to break that away from them. Someone might perceive someone as a bad person without even knowing them, just maybe even by what they hear, and make uninformed conclusions, and boom. And the real problem is when these types of people are in various positions of authority. And that could have devastating consequences towards someone. And I remember watching movies, decades ago, there was, for example, the one, I don't know what the movie was about or anything, but there's, for example, an old man at the end of the street. All the kids would make fun of him and everyone would call him weird, and even the adults formed an opinion, and no one ever talked to him. The old man kept to himself. At some point in the movie, perhaps towards the end, he did something very kind, maybe even heroic, and everyone's like, wow, how wrong we were. But everything that they thought of that individual in the movie was based, or would have been based, on their feelings. And we see this every day in real life. We see, for example, real bad people being put on a pedestal because of feelings, and saying even things like, well, there's a reason why they're like that, we have to consider. No. It's just feelings clouding perceptions, opinions, and everything else. And that's what I really want to highlight here and drive home, because people's feelings, most people are feeling based. And there's a time and place for feelings. But we'll just say in the everyday world as a descriptive, you have to minimize that. There's a saying in the corporate world, never make decisions based on feelings. But we see people doing this all the time today. Even when it comes to their personal lives, for example, when they're trying to find a mate, they rely on feelings. Fall in love, then get married. Let's contrast that for a moment with arranged marriages, which have a surprisingly high success rate than most people want to accept. A potential mate is vetted with the help of family, perhaps even friends. Feelings, when these two people, this man and woman, they get married, they develop feelings over time, and those feelings of love are really deep. Whereas love at first sight, more times than not, is superficial, doesn't really last, and people confuse another set of feelings called lust with love. And then people, the commoner, can't understand, oh, why are they so unhappy? Anyway, there's an example that's something everyone can relate to. People need to take the time to set their feelings aside, and most people cannot do that. And I've said many times before, we are in the late stage of the last stage of civilization, the age of decadence, again, and we repeat history because history is forgotten either by chance or design. And what always follows is our demise. And then we also have the literal 100-year patterns within the cycles of civilization, but that's a whole different topic. And during this late stage, most people lack critical thinking skills, an extensive knowledge base, and cannot separate their emotions when making conclusions or decisions. Because during this time, there's another saying that I'm going to refer to now. Hard times create strong people. Strong people create good times. Good times create weak people. Weak people create hard times. And that's where we're at right now. Weak people creating hard times. Because lacking critical thinking and everything else, being emotion-based in this age of decadence. There's no changing that. You're not going to change anyone's mind who's on one side of the fence or the other. There is a sliver in between that, for example, who are looking at both sides going, yeah, that's not right and that's not right. And there's some people that just want to take, for example, the easy road out and say, okay, I want to pick a side. And a lot of people who are on the edge of one side or the other, who are almost in that sliver, keep preaching, as a descriptive, this and that, perhaps facts, whatever, thinking that they're reaching others, but they're not. They're just really, it's a form of what's the word I'm looking for? The phrase, virtue signaling. Perhaps even saying, oh, look how smart I am. The people who know those facts, for example, know that there's no benefit to that. All at best you're doing is preventing people from picking a side just to take the easy road out and encourage them to say, stay neutral, we'll say. But feelings is really what I want to highlight. And that is a huge downfall. And you see that a lot in comment sections. You even see that with, for example, these interviews on the street where somebody is saying something that today's society might deem controversial, and somebody gets triggered and they start yelling and screaming and make complete fools of themselves, perhaps even wanting to resort to violence because they can't control their emotions. Take a look around, even in your own life, perhaps even within yourself. Control your emotions is really the key here. Anyway, thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe, comment, and share. Now, this topic I've discussed. Itchy eye. Itchy eye. I don't even know. I just kind of, bloop, that was it, gone.
Listen to this and write it down if you can't remember it. You're never going to outgrow warfare. You simply must learn to fight. I hear people say, when is it going to get easier? When you die.